Welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk outside the Scandalaris Football Center, Perlis Plaza. You've seen us here before in the past. VCast on location covering the Spartans. Hey, give us a like if you like the content here. Subscribe to the channel. Love to have you go over check out SpartanMag.com. Also, continued spring football coverage. $1, get you a month subscription. You'll check it out. You'll like it if you're a Michigan State fan watching this right now. Today, Jonathan Smith came out, spoke with the media a little bit, gave us an update. 4.5 weeks through spring practice. Week 5 will end on Saturday with the culmination of spring practice. The spring showcase they're calling it, the spring scrimmage. Revealed that it's going to be basically a practice, not a full-blown competitive game where they're keeping score. That's all right with me as long as I see first string versus first string and get a chance to see how some players are developing and so forth. Smith gave us an update on some things, gave us some nuggets on some players. We'll talk about that in a moment. Also, Chad Wilt, pass rush and special teams coach, spoke. Also Darius Snow, Ashton Lepo. Interesting things going on in terms of developments in the depth chart. We'll get into all of that. Paul Konyndyk is here. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. Paul Konyndyk, associate editor of SpartanMag.com. That's Paul right there. He's got some thoughts about Michigan State football right now. What'd you learn today or this week?
I didn't learn anything, but I like the vibe. I told you before we came out here, Jonathan Smith, he's been a head coach. He acts like a head coach. He's not pretending to be a head coach. And that, I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying this guy knows what he's doing. He knows the process. And everybody that works for him believes in what they're doing, and they're confident that they're doing the right thing and they're moving in the right direction. There's not throwing stuff on a wall and hoping it sticks. It's a process, and that's kind of what I appreciated. I appreciated some of the things that Jonathan Smith said. I think he was, he's not going to give us too much information, but you can tell a lot by body language, and that's what I watch, and I can tell that he likes a lot of what he's got to work with, and he likes what he's seen from this team in terms of the first thing that matters right now is culture and buy-in, and he's had that all spring ball. Who knows what's going to happen with the transfer portal being open and whatnot, but there's a quiet confidence in just the confidence in the process and what they're doing, and it's refreshing because it feels like they're building a college football team. They're not selling an NFL come here and you're going to get drafted type vision. They believe that if they build a college football team, they'll get guys in the NFL, and they'll get plenty of them. But they're building a product, and they like where they're at. And I think having gone through this before, Jonathan Smith knows a lot of what's going on. But the rebuild here is not nearly as drastic and difficult as a rebuild at Oregon State that he inherited in 2018. That was bottom of the barrel in a lot of ways, talent-wise. And I think he likes the culture. I think he likes some of the pieces. And I think he likes his coaching staff, so that gives him a lot of confidence. And now, someone needs a muffler. But now it's time to put the finishing touches on and finish this out. And I think there's an excitement level to get in Spartan Stadium with these guys and show the fans what they've been working on. And I know it's a showcase. I know it's a practice. But I don't think it's going to be as lame as we've seen the last couple of years in terms of, I don't know how it's going to show up on TV. But I know as detail-oriented as Jonathan Smith and his staff are, I think they're going to put a product on the field that's a little bit more entertaining than whatever that was the last 2 years that a lot of people, did not like. And I can understand why in the Big Ten Network.
Yeah, and last year, the big priority was to remain healthy and avoid injuries. So what we saw last year in the scrimmage, which was a practice, I think there was maybe 29 or 30 plays in all, and ones versus ones there's maybe 7 or 8 plays. So you and I are trying to get information about who's making progress. It was really a challenge to try to figure out what was going on there. I understand why they did it, but they were kind of outside of the box with that logic. Turns out they were healthier last year, I think, going into the fall, but they got into the fourth quarter of some teams and couldn't stop the run against Rutgers and Maryland and Minnesota, and you wonder about the entire calendar year and how much physicality they didn't have on the practice field, how much that showed up in the fourth quarter last year. New team this year, a lot of new personnel, a lot of holdover personnel, and the more that we talk to these players, and of course they're not gonna come out here and be critical of things, but they're so definitive, to use one of your words about something else, about what they like about it. You can just tell they are really, the coaches talk about the buy-in that the players have, and the players come out and they exude it, and it's not scripted. They really enjoy being coached by these guys, and they feel like progress is being made, and they're being told what they need to do to move on collectively and individually. They're not there yet, but am I wrong about that? Are you getting some of the sense of that from the players also? I mean, they're excited about this new regime.
They're excited, but I think there's also one of the reasons they are is like the word I would use is is transparency, and assessment. We talked a minute ago about how detail-oriented Jonathan Smith is, and I think that carries down throughout his entire coaching staff. I know Joe Rossi is really detail-oriented, but these guys, when they're getting coached up, when they're going over film, they're hearing exactly what they're doing right and wrong and where they need to get better. And it's not like they're being, it's not like they're being beaten down for making mistakes, but they know exactly what they have to do to get through the process. And I think there's a lot of these guys want to get coached, but they want good coaching, constructive coaching, and they want to get better in the way that things are being communicated with them. And it starts at the top with Jonathan Smith with that open door policy. That's not exclusive to Jonathan Smith. Players are able to approach him. Players are able to approach all of their position coaches, and they've done a lot of things to kind of open the door for those guys to get like the old D'Antonio era, where guys would come over for dinner, with their position coach, and get to know them beyond football players. And there's a lot of that. So there's a lot more trust. There's a lot of trust being built in a short amount of time. And I think part of it's because of telling guys where they stand and being completely honest with them. Not worried that a guy's going to make a jump to the portal because you say, hey, you did this, you're not doing this. This guy's doing better than you in this area. This is where you need to get better. That's what guys want to know. They want to know where they need to get where they want to. And I think the transparency, that's helped out a lot. But I think the open door policy, I think the collective process of working for something, I think there's been a lot of galvanizing factors. And then also the collective experience of these guys that came back, of what they went through last year. I mean, that brought guys a lot closer together than you might think. It's only a dragonfly, Joe.
It's coming right at me, though.
Yeah, it's not a murder hornet.
I didn't want him to let it hit me right between the eyes, though.
Hummingbird. Anyways, guys are working towards something, but I also think because of what they went through last year, there's an appreciation, for what's going on right now, and in a calmness that they didn't have last year.
Darius Snow had some specifics. He didn't want to be too critical of the previous coaching staff and so forth, but he said something like, of course they've not gotten into an off season yet, but you talked about the open door policy. You talked about that what they said they were going to be, they have followed up on it. And he said, in the past, they might not see the head coach for days or even weeks. I was like, whoa, weeks? And you heard a little bit about that last offseason. And we saw what happened in the transfer portal last spring. But again, he didn't want to be critical of anything, but it spoke volumes about how much they're everybody's in line and getting and appreciating what's going on right now. Now, what does that mean on the field this weekend? They still have a ways to go. I'm not expecting a finished product. I will say this about previous scrimmages that we saw in previous years, that Michigan State operated quickly and didn't have a lot of procedure penalties and so forth in short bit scrimmaging we've seen. Speaking with the coaches and players, but specifically the coaches, there was too many turnovers in the first scrimmage. Second scrimmage a little bit better in some areas. We've been hearing that the defense has been ahead, which is understandable. But what they're going to see in this scrimmage, it'll be interesting to see how tied together it is and how tied together it can be after 14 or 15 practices. Smith is he's a taskmaster. Everybody knows that, and he's not out here saying it's good or bad. It's just step by step, block by block, what that's going to look like on Saturday with a lot of moving parts on the offensive line and a defense that's a little bit ahead. It might not be a bad thing if the defense wins the day on Saturday, depending on how much ones versus ones that we see.
Yeah, I think I would want the defense to win personally if I'm a Michigan State fan. Not that you don't want the offense to play well, but if I'm a Michigan State fan, what I want to see is the beginnings of a defense that really has some teeth, because that's one of the areas that Michigan State has struggled. I think if you have a defense with some teeth, a front seven that can get the job done, it really helps. It really helps you. I mean, what we saw last year when an offense struggled, a lot of that was a defense couldn't get stops early. So it kind of builds off each other. But I think that Michigan State has the pieces, the established pieces, veteran linebackers, veteran defensive linemen, where they should, in my opinion, based on the personnel available, be better. And I think that you look at the last two scrimmages with guys like Derek Harmon getting back on the field, with guys like Daquan Deuce getting out or Deuce getting out on the field. That has helped that front seven get better. So I would think that you'd want the linebackers ahead a little bit. I'm interested to see on offense. I know they want it to be a lot of moving parts in terms of formation and whatnot, but also be simplicity. I just wonder, like, okay, if you're moving window dressing around, that takes a while to learn, like once you put it in a scrimmage setting. So I'm wondering if you're going to have some of those kind of
and will
errors.
they want to show that?
Yeah,
because they've done a lot with scrimmage with motion. Young Feezy Baby is a guy on our message board that asked about that, and I answered it. Then I lost my answer, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it. But on the Underground Bunker message board, I'll be getting into that question later again tonight. But when they were at Oregon State, there were some key plays that I can remember where there was some immediate sprint motion that sprung some quick hitting things open. One was like a short touchdown pass to Jack Velling last year, I think against Cal or Stanford, where the linebacker just couldn't get over the top. And that's Shanahan stuff. That's Miami Dolphins stuff. That's NFL stuff. I mean, they're under center a lot, like NFL teams are, but they'll use motion, quick motion, sudden motion, sprint motion to get a pre-snap advantage. Do they show that, or they want to stay vanilla? I'm not sure.
These are Big Ten teams that are. And all the other teams that they're going to be playing, they're going to be scouting everything that they did at Oregon State. So
if you have to practice it, you practice it. It's on film. It's on film.
Right.
Throw it out
I agree.
there, right?
So and it depends on like what value you get. It's like what's the risk reward, and I think if it's they're probably assuming that people are as thorough as they are in terms of evaluation. I mean, we know how it is when a new coaching staff comes in.
I thought it was interesting today when Smith said that the defense has been tough on the offense in terms of how well the defense has disguised things.
Yeah, that stood out to me. The other thing he said about the front seven, and talking about like the linebacker play, defensive line. He talked about Cal Halliday running around having a good thing. And I know a lot of people out there don't want to, like Cal Halliday's the new Joey Hauser. And people want to be down on Cal Halliday, who, by the way, ranks 11th all-time in Michigan State history in tackles right now. I just want to throw that out there. So don't throw him under the bus. I was doing some film, like trying to throw some stuff out that from last night, and I was watching him run around. He was doing like they're doing like a pursuit type deal, and he was playing running back. He's moving better. He's moving a lot better than he did last year.
Playing running back to show the defensive ball.
And he had a move where he wheeled around on the sideline, and he moved very well.
I've been hearing that he's moving well.
And so like I would put stock in everything I heard, and I think he really likes this defense. I think Joe Rossi being a guy that's like another guy with an open door policy, but he's going to answer as many questions as these linebackers can throw at him. And you've got a heady group of linebackers, whether it's Jordan Hall, being a second-year guy. He's playing chess, not checkers. Cal playing chess, not checkers. You got other veteran guys, Darius Snow being one. The new guys coming in, they're old souls. And, Jordan Turner was telling me the other day, you went back and watched that video. He's like, it's nice talking to guys in the linebacker room when we were learning something where you're talking about at the third or fourth manifestation, and it's not like you're coming in as a freshman. You can talk football and real football talk. So I think all these guys are vibing pretty well. And going back to where we started this tangent, I think the defense should be ahead of the offense.
There's some sudden depth at linebacker, whereas last year when the season ended, they were paper thin at linebacker. Yeah. Darius Snow's excited about it. And what Jonathan Smith told us back in January at the high school coaches convention, he tells the second stringers, you're playing. He's going to play a lot of depth players for various reasons, which is a hard thing to do if guys are not ready, but they throw them out there. That's one of the reasons Aiden Chiles got a lot of snaps last year. He really believes in it from a developmental standpoint, from a depth standpoint, from a prevention situation. Linebackers, there's going to be some good linebackers that are not starting, but they're going to get on the field. Snow's going to be in that category. Turner's going to be battling for a job. Halliday's right there, like you said. I've been impressed. I've been hearing a lot of good things about Wayne Matthews, a transfer from Old Dominion. Darius Snow had good things to say about him. Snow's competing against these guys, but he sees them as teammates. You can just see that he's exuding that. Yeah. He's fired up about the depth there and what that part of it can be in the linebacker room. They're a 4-2-5 base team, but when they play Illinois, Michigan, Iowa teams that'll load up and send the run at you. They'll morph to a 4-3 and have 3 linebackers on the field, and they might even be looking for another one in the portal here in the coming days. But linebackers gone from paper thin to all of a sudden some good players in there and veteran bodies. And Halliday, like you said, he's a little slimmer and quicker now, right?
Yeah, he's about 10 pounds lighter.
Last year is read and react and nothing wrong with the read and react defense, 2-gapping defense, but I never got the sense that the back 7 for Michigan State ever really knew every single play where they were supposed to be.
Right.
Now that it's 1-gapping and he's quicker and he's got one gap that he's moving with and the reads are more distinctive, he might look like a different player.
And it's not fair to him. Like last year we talked about, like
he played dinged up.
He played dinged up. He was told to put on
the weight,
and he did it because
he had to play dinged up because there's no other linebackers.
Right. He did it because he thought
he's a team guy.
They thought it'd make him more durable.
Yeah.
And it made him slower. And you think of it. I go back to Johnny Adams back when he played with a pulled hamstring, and everyone was dogging on him week after week after week after week. Well, Johnny Adams was the only guy that they had to play that position. He saddled up week after week, and he played hurt. And there's no way a defensive back should be playing with a hurt hammy. So I think sometimes it's wrong when guys get dumped on for doing something that's self-sacrificial but benefits the team. And I hope, for Cal's sake, that he has a good season, and I hope for the linebackers' sake and the front 7's sake that they are able to, to kind of reclaim themselves. Because I feel like for as long as the D'Antonio era, for the entire D'Antonio era, the front 7 for the most part was really good, and I'd like to see Michigan State return to that because it's fun to watch. I really don't think you can have a top 25 defense unless you can stop the run, and you got to have a good front 7 to do that.
I'll be curious to see what Chris Bogle looks like. I've been saying this for 3 years, though, Paul. He came from Florida. I'm like, they needed a pass rush 2 years ago. He had some 8 or 9 sacks while he was at Florida. Came to Michigan State, looked pretty good against the run for 2 or 3 games. Got hurt in the Minnesota game here 2 years ago. Comes back, and last year, I think he had like 1.5 tackles for loss for the season. Started half the games, battled some more injuries, but wasn't really a plus player. He was just a guy. Now he's back again. Now he's a veteran. New system. He's fired up about it. You're hearing good things about him from coaches. I've been saying it for 3 years about Bogle and what he can be. Saying it again, and I'm not closing the door on the possibility that he can be what a lot of Michigan State people thought he was going to be when he initially came from Florida. Different spin on that defensive end role now. Now he's a stand-up rush end. So, an upfield, more one-gapping like we've talked about all spring. There's a chance he might look like a different Chris Bogle, too.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is that he's got a guy in Chad Wilt, Russian's coach, that has confidence in him. And I felt like, last year, the Tumisi Adelaide coming in, they were looking to play him, and he shouldn't have been on the field.
I really don't think they knew much about him when they brought him in.
I understand that, but you can't say just because we thought he was a 5-star, we thought he was going to be good, that he should be on the field. And a guy like Chris Bogle,
you and I never said that.
Yeah, we did not. And a guy like Chris Bogle is a guy that kind of suffers in that position to some extent. Now, Chris Bogle didn't like the way they used the defensive end last year, and he feels a lot better in this system. And I think a reset in a lot of ways is something a lot of these guys need. But Bogle's feeling good about himself. Wilt likes Chris Bogle, Russian's coach, and Joe Rossi likes Chris Bogle based on what I've come to learn. Bogle's a guy that cares. Bogle's a guy that wants to do well, and he wants to finish on top. Now, can you stay healthy? We've seen a lot of defensive linemen get hurt in the last couple of years, but is some of that wear and tear based on them having to do too much of the heavy lifting in the trenches? I don't know, but the rush-in thing is interesting. The fact that I'll go back to what we talked about last time we had a VCast. The fact that Bogle was trotted out for interviews is significant, and who gets trotted out for interviews in spring ball is, if you trust the coaching staff, and I do trust these guys, they're not going to throw a guy out there that's not doing something. And so I think that says a lot. Everything we've heard about Bogle this spring has been positive. There's 5 guys that are playing there. Job is one of them. James Schott, a kid that I think Chad Wilt recruited. When he was at Indiana, I believe he did. But there's like 5 guys running around there. It's a specialty position. They've tried other guys there and they haven't stuck. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that defense. There are going to be times where I think you'll see multiple of those rush ends out there, but they're going to move guys around, and there's a lot of excitement There's a lot of excitement in the defensive line room. There's a lot of excitement linebacker room. I'm just looking forward to seeing, like, against the ones, seeing what this defense looks like, what it takes away, things maybe it gives up a little bit. But it'll be fun to see some guys run around and actually perhaps get kind of a clearer picture of what guys can and can't do.
And at the other defensive end, you got Quintarius Dugen coming in from Middle Tennessee State. He was either second or third team All-Conference USA last year, I forget which. And Ken Talley, we continue to hear good things about him this spring, so that's the other defensive end. Coaches always talk about getting the best 11 on the field. They're teaching the rush end position to Thompson and Bogle. I'm wondering when the time comes and you need your best 11 on the field, if both of those guys are on the field, or if Thompson can swing back over to the down defensive end. Thompson is a guy that came along steadily last year as a true freshman at defensive end, and he just keeps getting better. They're looking at him at rush end. I think they're excited about that. So you have Bogle and Thompson both over there. We're talking about Bogle. There's a chance Bogle's a second stringer, but Thompson continues to come around as a young guy with a lot of ability.
From what I understand from Coach Will is, those guys are working together, but other guys are also getting work at other defensive end positions. So just because you're at rush end doesn't mean you're not somewhere else.
That makes sense.
There's 5 guys that can play it, right?
Sure.
So sometimes those guys are working as a group exclusively, like you saw at practice this morning. There's other times where they're working with defensive ends or with the entire defensive line, front 7 type stuff, and so guys are moving in and out. But I think it is a specialty position, so some of the read stuff, some of the different stuff with stances and like how that's going to be dictated. I think that's where the foundation is set in spring. So those guys have to soak up those reps right now. You talk about Thompson and Bogle; those are 2 veteran guys with high football IQs. And I guess I call Thompson a veteran. He's not. He's a sophomore, but he's an old soul, and he acts like a veteran, much like much like Jordan Hall acts like a veteran.
I asked Jonathan Smith what he thought, what he's learned about the running back position through 14 practices, and his first thing was that Nathan Carter. I can't remember his exact adjectives, but you can tell he likes Carter a lot as a first string running back. So whether or not what kind of blocking they get in this offensive line, they're learning new schemes. It's a rebuilding process going on there. They have some deficiencies at offensive tackle in terms of depth. Tanner Miller's there at center. You have Vandemark, and I don't know what that first string is going to look like. They're trying to get it all together. They've got a very good offensive line coach, one of the best in the country. But there's only so much you can do with the players that you have. They'll be back in the portal here in the coming days. We'll be covering that at SpartanMag.com as to what's going to be happening at that position. Christian Phillips is in the picture. There's some others. I kind of think Vandermark's ready to take a step forward, but collectively they're learning a lot, and they've got to come together rapidly. And that's going to be a big challenge. That's going to be one of the X factors for this team in this season, is how well that offensive line can come around in a rebuilding type of situation.
So we're talking about rebuilding. We're also talking about running back Nate Carter. So if Coach Smith says he likes what he sees Nate Carter, this is a guy that's making plays when maybe the holes aren't there where they want them to be. So I think that's when guys really stand out. I think of guys like Javon Ringer, Le'Veon Bell, lots of those guys. You got to be able to make some plays. But yeah, obviously that offensive line, and that's tough when you're learning a different system. But I have been supremely impressed whenever I've watched reps on the offensive line. The way he coaches, Michalczyk, is really good. The way he coaches and the way guys gravitate towards him, the way he makes corrections, the way those guys embrace those corrections. It's not cringy. It's not like Full Metal Jacket, getting yelled at type stuff. It's they're good corrections. Now
they get work done.
But the other thing is, and we'll go back to one of the things that coaches are continuing to talk about, is much of what they've been done in spring ball, the drills they've installed and stuff like that, are designed to be used over the summer and continue to get better and better. And that's going to be the next step for these guys. What do they do when they're not, being coached up all the time? They're going to have to do a lot of individual work, and they got to get that done. But it's going to be able to put in work in the summer, and then you got training camp. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. I do have a lot of faith in Michalczyk, and yeah, bodies are an issue right now. We'll see where they go from here.
We've been talking a lot of minutes here. We haven't talked about the one guy that people are going to be most interested in seeing. That's Aidan Chiles, the quarterback. We asked Jonathan Smith a little bit about how Chiles went from the first practice to the second practice, first scrimmage to the second scrimmage. And he said, pretty good, is about the same in both. That's a guy that's getting accustomed to being the guy, the first-string guy. You'll see him on Saturday. All kinds of talent. Whether or not everything is all working together with an effective run game, that remains to be seen. He said something interesting, that there were some run plays in the second scrimmage that would have gone for a touchdown if it had been live tackling. And that gets back to the age-old question: how much do you sprinkle in quarterback runs? Do you keep them protected? Last year with DJ Uiagalelei, they had some designed keepers in the red zone, and other times. And this guy Chiles, he's got quick feet and a quick long stride. He can be effective as a runner. Zone read keeps. How often you do that? That's one of those questions.
That's one of those things where I wouldn't be calling a lot in a spring game.
There's no tackling. The quarterbacks don't get tackled.
But if there's like some scrambles or whatever, that's fine. But
still two-hand touch.
What I want to see from him, because I think the reason we haven't been talking about him, because he is like the consistent piece, right? But what I want to see from him, and I think going back to what Lindgren said last week, so we're talking about some of these formational things. If a wide receiver is not in the right formation or something like that, the next step for Chiles is not the arm talent. It's not to be able to throw the football. The next step for him is to be able to, adjust the pieces that need to be adjusted. So guys that aren't in good position get in good position, and that's kind of the next step for him is, can you be the game manager? Can you be the guy that's moving your chess pieces where they need to be moved?
And Schuster, the backup quarterback, transfer from North Dakota. Smith mentioned him, a guy that's showing some savvy, and that's why they brought him here, because he's played for 4 or 5 years in North Dakota. North Dakota's all-time leader in passing yardage, touchdowns, all those things. He's a Michigander, wanted to come back here, be part of a Big Ten team, and they did a really good job getting a veteran second stringer, knowing that Chiles is the guy, and Schuster knew that Chiles was the guy, but he's there in case he's needed. And he's a competitor. I'm sure he's going for the job also. But Chiles is the guy. Everybody knows that. But Schuster is an asset for the program when you consider there were no quarterbacks on campus in December for the first time since World War II.
Yeah, and you look at guys like Alessio Milivojevic. Guys get some talent. Even Rylan Jesse, I was cutting up a little bit of film last night, and I'm like, I can see it. So that it's just impressive what they've done bringing in those quarterbacks. But I'm really impressed with the way what they've done with the portal thus far is the way it should be done, in my opinion. You bring guys that A, good people, B, have some sort of connection to either the program or the state. Guys like Jordan Turner, wanted to come home. Guys like Tommy Schuster wanted to come home. I mean, not all of those guys are going to be like that. Luke Newman from Holy Cross or whatever, he's from out of state. You bring in guys that need to fit, guys that fit spots.
He was a Michigander too, though.
Oh, that's right. So
is he Brother Rice? I think, I don't know.
But that's.
But
that's a good way to do it.
All 10 of them are proven college football players.
Right.
They're not guys that redshirted somewhere. Need to bring them in from Arizona or Louisville after they didn't play, just trying to flip the roster for any good reason. All 10 of them are proven college players. Hearing good things about Wayne Matthews, Jordan Turner, like you said, and of course both of those quarterbacks. In terms of prior transfers, continue to hear good things about Alante Brown. Alante Brown struggled last year in special teams. Only 3 catches, had a fumble against Rutgers after a catch at a key moment. Hearing good things about him this spring also, so we'll see what kind of improvement is there. At the wide receiver position, Jerron Glover, Montorie Foster, those 3 plus Nick Marsh and Antonio Gates Jr. They still need some more there at the wide receiver position, but we'll see how they hook up with Chiles on Saturday.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what they do. When you're talking about window dressing and whatnot, you got tight ends, you got a lot of different formational stuff, you got a run game that's, that if you've got a good offensive line, it should be more effective. How then does that benefit Alante Brown? I think, when you have a slot receiver and you don't have a tight end, you don't have consistent running game, it kind of limits what you do. I'm going to be interested to see how he develops as being a guy in space, and, can he go from point A to point B? His patience, explosion. It takes time. I think of a guy like R.J. Shelton in the past. It took a little bit of time for him to become go from being a specialty guy to being like catching the ball and making most of it in certain ways. Even like a Jaden Reed, when he was here his first year, it was different than he was here on some of the short stuff later on. I'll be interested to see how he's used. I've been down on Elante Brown in the past a little bit, and so that's one guy that I really want.
He struggled last year.
Yeah, and he made a lot of boneheaded plays.
Well, the special teams last year, there were some alignment issues, and I at some point I stopped blaming the players.
Right. And I will say this, maybe we should finish here, but having talked to Coach Wilt about special teams, man, they've got a good plan for what they do. And I'm not talking about a plan to bust big returns. I'm talking about the real stuff that you need on special teams in an era where, it's either fair catch or a guy like busts one on you. I think leverage, spacing, tackling fundamentals, those are all going to be much improved, and they're putting a lot more effort, at least in practice and stuff we've seen this spring, on sidelines, using angles, and you got guys that are working together, maybe not in the same position group, but you got guys like wide receiver, defensive backs, linebackers, tight ends, doing different tackling circuits together with a special teams emphasis, and I think that's gonna benefit
some different drills. I've seen some.
It's going to benefit Michigan State, but in terms of like doing a better job of working together and understanding what your job is on special teams, there's a lot more. I'll go back to it. Attention to detail on the special teams piece.
We've covered a lot of coaching changes here over the years, and every time there's a coaching change, there's always like that player that was kind of like beneath the surface with the previous regime that pops up and does some things. I'm going all the way back to Devin Thomas in year one under D'Antonio and Adam Decker, some guys, Marcus Hyde, some guys that were not getting playing time. Then all of a sudden Devin Thomas becomes Jeremy Ware. Those guys become NFL draft picks. Jeremy Ware and Devin Thomas did, and it's happened with other players in the past as well. I'm wondering about some players that might do that. Elante Brown played last year, but I'm wondering a new coaching staff, a new coat of paint, new schemes. He might be better than he was a year ago. I'm trying to think of some others that might rise.
Mike Masunas, Jack Nickel,
tight ends.
Two tight ends. I'm just looking at what do you need as a tight end to be successful in their scheme. Well, you've got to block. And one of the things that Jonathan Smith said today was he feels better about the tight ends after that scrimmage because they did some things maybe the guys besides Jack Velling that he didn't know they could do or they hadn't done to this point in spring. So he's feeling pretty good about that tight end position. I've heard a lot of good things about Mike Masunas. Jack Nickel's a name that has been brought up as a guy that's physical. I think your best bet at getting guys that maybe people gave up on or were forgetting about is probably going to be a tight end. I'll go back to the D'Antonio era, like Kellen Davis. Perfect example of a guy that, he had all kinds of physical ability. People, previous coaching staff was kind of like, he's never going to get it. He's never going to be that guy. And then all of a sudden, 1 year with D'Antonio, he ends up being an NFL draft pick and sticks in the NFL for more than one contract because he can block, something they didn't think he could do before.
Plays some defensive end, too. They utilized those guys. We'll keep an eye on some others because they'll need some good stories.
Bogle's a guy too.
Bogle.
You go back. That's a guy.
Keep an eye on Ken Talley too. Who's a young guy?
Ken Talley, and he's a guy that I think last year they didn't know whether he was going to be an end or a tackle or whatnot. But when you start hearing a guy like Ken Talley, you wonder with a guy that transfers after less than a year at his old school, like. But when you hear people talking about him as a leader or having some leadership qualities, that's a positive mark. But he's a guy that would be really, I think Michigan State fans should watch, and I think he's got a chance.
I think Ade Willie at corner is a guy that's getting some run. We'll see what it looks like on Saturday, but a guy that's not been a playing group guy thus far in his young career. But I think he's in there challenging for a cornerback position right now, along with Charles Brantley and Chance Rucker and some others. But Ade Willie might be in that category also.
I'm going to be interested to see Jaron Mangum, like when healthy. I don't know. There's been times at Oregon State where they liked big tailbacks, or they were in KB. Keith Panafa has got a really good reputation with big backs. He's done a really nice job with that. Going all the way back to the Boise State days, he's a really good tailbacks coach. He does it the right way. No corners cut, and I think some of those running backs might, maybe Berger, maybe maybe Mangum, but Nate Carter's a good player, but there's going to be one of those veteran tailbacks that kind of does some things that are more that we haven't seen yet. Like Nate Carter, obviously, I think he's going to catch the ball out of the backfield.
That's what Smith said today.
He was never kind of like touted in that role by the previous coaching staff. Jalen Berger, can he become a guy that can move a pile and be trusted to move a pile? He wasn't in that role per se by the last year. And then Jaron Mangum, can he reclaim some of what he had early in his career at Colorado and in flashes at South Florida? He's a great dude, a guy that teammates like to be around. He's good in the meeting room, but can he be a guy that can finish his career in an up note with a new coaching staff? And I think their chances are good that at least one of those running backs, besides Nate Carter, is going to take a step and surprise some people. A
lot of storylines, a lot of player development questions. We'll learn more on Saturday, 2 o'clock. Spring Showcase is going to be on the Big Ten Network also. Have you checked the weather yet?
No.
I can smell spring a little bit, Paul. Yeah. I can smell it. I smell spring. I'll be here on Saturday. I know a lot of you will too. For anything else? For Paul Konyndyk, my name is Jim Comparoni. I've been watching the VCast from East Lansing, Michigan with the Spartans.
Yeah, you're right. It smells like spring.
Smelling the spring a little bit. SpartanMag.com.